The info product world has been rocked in January. Amy Porterfield just announced that she's closing down Digital Course Academy, the offer she's been known for years and that has allegedly made her over $54 million. She explained it on her podcast and YouTube video and said that it just felt right in the moment and that she wants to focus on other things. And around the same time, Jenna Kutcher announced that she's shutting down her Gold Digger podcast. It amassed over 100 million downloads, had a huge platform, and she's not planning to come back to it anytime soon. From the outside, it looks like two of the biggest names in the space are stepping away from some of their most well-recognized offers. So naturally, people are freaking out. Because when someone at that level exits, it sends a wave across the entire industry, and the assumption is always the same. They must know something the rest of us don't. So every time this happens, the same question comes up. Are info products dead? So let's look at what's really going on here. Why Amy Porterfield closed down her 8-figure offer, what that means for the entire industry as a whole, and whether or not info products are really dead. In case you haven't met yet, hi, I'm Anastasia. I'm an online marketing and online course expert. I help creators and experts turn what they know into info products that actually sell. I've worked behind the scenes on multiple 7-figure courses and helped my clients generate over $4 million in collective revenue. I've also spent a lot of time inside SaaS platforms that run creator businesses day to day on the back end, which means I'm not coming at this from the theory perspective or best practices I've heard in YouTube video. I'm sharing real life experience. So in her video, Amy basically says that she's grateful for the impact the program has had. Reminder, she allegedly made $54 million with it. That's what she claimed, but that she's reached a point where she just wants to move on. The live launches are exhausting. She's ready for more. And she gives a whole lengthy explanation about how you have to be willing to let go of something good and listen to yourself and that whole spiel.
After building a program that served over 28,000 students on their journey of creating freedom and flexibility in their lives, after launching Digital Course Academy year after year after year, I'm doing something I never thought I'd do. I'm closing the doors to new enrollment.
She also mentions that she's not living her business or her niche. It's literally just this one offer. So instead, she's moving into coaching for female entrepreneurs who are already making over $150K a year called Calibre Collective. And she's also launching a new Millie Club for business owners at $500K and above. So very clearly, she's transitioning away from a mass market program and online course with broad appeal and into smaller, more curated, high-touch offers. What I found most interesting wasn't even the decision itself, to be honest, but how people reacted to her explanation. The internet has exploded with suspicious comments. Basically, people are calling out BS. If you look at the comment section under her YouTube video, people are starting to question her authenticity. One comment stood out to me in particular because it asked the uncomfortable question that a lot of people are probably thinking. How much of this pivot was driven by declining launch conversions? The comment explained that they'd run an agency for years and have seen clients bringing DCA-style strategies that have worked really well in the past, but then stopped performing as well over time. That webinars stopped converting, show-up rates dropped. And I think that's a very fair question to ask, because if a program is still working and if it's still helping people and you still believe in it, but you're done with live launch and grind, why not just move it all to evergreen? Why would you kill off such a massive cash cow instead of just letting people trickle in at their own speed? Meanwhile, other people are a lot more blunt. Jessica Stansbury, who is also a creator in the info product space, released a 40-minute video literally titled "The Grifters of the Online Course and Digital Product Industry." Ouch. Basically, she outright says that they're selling outdated products and are swindling people out of their money, and that this is now starting to catch up with them, and basically they're not making the revenue that they used to make. She also claims that the industry as a whole has changed irrevocably and that info products are basically over, more or less. All right, so there is a lot to unpack here, and I'll say this upfront, I do not agree with Jessica on all her points. I think there's a lot more going on, both with Amy's business and with the industry as a whole. So let's start with the most pressing question. Is Amy Porterfield closing her program because it's not making money anymore? And by extension, does that mean that online courses are also dead? Have launches become harder for her? Is it just not worth her time and money to launch this program anymore? The truthful answer is that as outsiders, we will never know how well or how bad that course was selling. We can only rely on Amy's claims that it had made over $54 million in revenue, but was most of that made early on and have the last years been slower? We truly do not know, and we probably never will unless she opens up her numbers. However, after working directly with CEOs and seeing similar decisions play out behind the scenes, I do have a unique vantage point insight into what usually happens when decisions like this are made. And I'll share exactly what I think played into Amy's decision as we go through this video. But to lay out the groundwork for that and to make sure we're not judging an entire industry based on one player, we first need to zoom out. Are info products as an industry dead and done? Jessica Stansbury certainly seems to think so. She justifies that opinion by saying that her online business is not performing the way it used to. So fewer people are showing up to her webinars, she has lower conversions, and selling courses is not feeling as easy as it did back in 2020. Again, I cannot speak on behalf of any businesses whose numbers I haven't seen personally. And I actually think it's very open and vulnerable of Jessica to say publicly that her revenue is not the same as it used to be. So my next point is not a shade to her at all. However, I do think it's misguided to take only two specific businesses in a multi-billion-dollar industry, only knowing the real data for one of them, and immediately jump to definitive conclusions about the market as a whole. Conclusions like AI has killed online courses, no one will ever pay for an online course or a digital product, and the industry is over. That's a huge leap. What people keep conflating is this: some strategies from 2018 do not work anymore. AI is for sure changing the landscape. You can't rinse and repeat the same tactics and get the same results. Therefore, the entire industry must be dying. That's a category error. It's like watching Blockbuster go bankrupt in 2010 and declaring that people were completely done with watching movies at home. That's not what happened. What died was just one way of delivering that experience. The demand didn't disappear. The format of driving to a store to rent a DVD movie did. And this is exactly what I'm seeing right now in the info product space. While I don't have Amy's internal data, I do have a front row seat to what's happening across the market. By the nature of what I do, I see behind the scenes of a lot of info businesses. And let me tell you, there is a significant number of creators who have made more money in 2025 alone than in previous years. Info product businesses that adapt, solve very specific problems, and are backed by a strong personal brand are honestly doing better than ever. Just one of the many examples that comes to mind is a high schooler I recently interviewed who launched a digital product helping other school students get better grades by using smarter studying techniques. She has made multiple five figures in the first weeks of her launching that product alone. Can you imagine being in high school and earning tens of thousands of dollars in a week? I was blown away by that girl, truly. By the way, the interview is in German, but if you do understand German or just want to watch it with subtitles, I highly recommend it. I wish I weren't bound by NDAs and could share even more numbers, but what I can say is that some of the revenue growth of info product businesses I've seen this year is honestly insane. At the same time, have I seen businesses where course revenue went down in 2025? Absolutely. A lot of people see that old tactics are not working as well as they used to, but to me, if the market as a whole is still growing and the old tactics have stopped working, the conclusion is not, oh, it's just not working anymore, it's over. The conclusion is, I need to change my strategies and tactics. And I just feel like anyone who jumps to these conclusions so fast massively underestimates how many tweaks and optimizations and adjustments any real business go through behind the scenes. So to me, it's simply a signal. Okay, the market has changed. I need to adapt to the new conditions, but as long as the market itself is growing, there is still a way to make it work. But what about AI, you ask? Has AI not created an overflow of information so people just simply won't buy digital products and online courses anymore? Truthfully, I find this hilarious because since at least 2015, there has been abundance of information online. YouTube, Google, books. Yes, of course, AI changed how readily the information is available and market expectations have changed too, but it didn't change the fact that everybody still needs to learn. And we still cannot magically download knowledge into our brain. And if we really learned best from bare bones text and impersonal explanations, we could all just read something once, like encyclopedia, and apply it perfectly in our lives. But we know that's not the case. Now, AI is changing the market. There is no question about that, but not in a way I hear most people claim. In fact, I've done a deep dive on exactly how AI is changing the market and the step-by-step things you need to do to adapt and stay relevant, and I'll link that video here. Okay, so to recap, I'm not 100% definitively saying Amy Porterfield hasn't seen lower revenue or that her launches are performing exactly the way they used to, because I simply don't know her numbers. But even if her revenue is down, it still doesn't automatically mean that industry as a whole is over, especially when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture of how the market as a whole is doing. And that's where things get interesting, because something did push Amy to shut down an 8-figure offer. And while lower revenue could be part of that story, it's hard to believe that's the whole picture. Amy has the budget to hire the best strategists. She has the experience to rebrand, to reposition, to adapt. She's been in the business for literally decades. This isn't her first major shift. And that's where I think there are deeper, more human factors at play. So here's what I think really happened. Based on my experience experience, when decisions like this get made about wildly successful products, it's almost never just one simple reason. In practice, it usually comes down to one or more of these 4 factors: personal brand fatigue, boredom, burnout, and reluctance to adapt. These are all connected, but one of them usually comes first, and it's personal brand fatigue. It's like a coin with 2 sides. On one side, the creator just gets tired of being the brand, and on the other, the audience gets tired of the creator's brand. On the creator side, this boils down to the simple fact that while personal brand is a massive multiplier in business and in life, it is also a massive responsibility. Being a personal brand, the literal face of your business, is an emotional roller coaster. When your identity and your income are tied together, it gets so draining, especially when everyone online has opinions, as they do. Not just about your work, by the way, but about how you look, how you dress, how you talk, how you behave, everything. I don't need to tell you that people online can be brutal. And I think what a lot of people underestimate is just how grueling it can be when your entire business depends on you showing up, being on camera, talking about the same thing over and over again, carrying the energy day after day after day. At some point, it can start to feel like you're trapped by your own success, and you need to show up rain or shine because this is the cash cow. You're the cash cow. This is what brings the money in. But what if it's not necessarily what you want anymore? A rebuttal I hear a lot is, well, what do they expect? It comes with the territory. And sure, of course it does. But people in the public eye are still humans with their own limits, with changing interests, with phases of life. So I think it's sort of understandable that the pressure to always be on can get a bit much. Now, I've seen this play out repeatedly. Vanessa Lau openly stepped away from her online course business at its peak because she was just burned out. I've just recently spoken to a multiple 7-figure founder whose info product businesses are incredibly profitable, and they're selling the business. Not because the revenue is down. I've seen the numbers firsthand, so I'm confident, but because after years of being the personal brand, they're just exhausted. That's the creator side of it. Now, I don't actually think that is the main thing going on with Amy though. She's been remarkably consistent for years. And while I'm sure her excitement about being in the public eye fluctuates too, she somehow found a way to keep showing up for decades. From the outside, it doesn't look like she suddenly stopped wanting to be visible. In her case, personal brand fatigue shows up more on the other side of the equation. When a personal brand doesn't meaningfully evolve or change, the audience eventually gets tired, even if the creator keeps showing up. And unfortunately, I do feel like Amy's brand has been a little bit too stale and static over the years. Jessica Sansbury made a similar point in her video, and on this one, I agree. I think a lot of the original internet entrepreneurs, especially those who build their brands pre-2018, have stayed a little bit in the past with their branding. Entrepreneurs like Amy Porterfield, Marie Forleo, Jenna Kutcher, Natalie Ellis, to me personally, they feel a little bit dated. All of their brands have the same vibe. It's very polished, it's very scripted, a little too perfect, a little too smooth. And it's not that their brands are bad. It's simply that what used to signal credibility and build trust now creates distance with your audience. Marie Forleo has even acknowledged this herself in a newsletter back in 2022, and people online were also quick to point it out. As for Amy, even her announcement about closing her program down felt like it was read straight from a teleprompter. It felt very news anchory and somehow not authentic. The only moment that I felt was genuinely human was when she was talking about how exhausting and draining life launches had been for her. Polished and put together used to work really well because this was the aspiration. But the market right now is shifting super hard towards authenticity, towards openness, showing the messy middle, letting people see the human behind the expert persona. Now, people have always connected with authenticity, but now that AI is everywhere, it's not just a nice to have anymore. Now, being polished and vanilla is actually a liability because your business will get less attention. The more your delivery resembles an AI avatar or a perfectly rehearsed script, the less emotionally connected people will feel to your offer, and thereby the fewer reasons they will have to pay for it. So if Amy is indeed seeing lower revenue, my bet is that this factor played a much bigger role than most people think. So yeah, I do think Amy's brand has felt old school for quite some time and not in a good way. And knowing how smart she is, my bet is that she has felt that too. And sometimes when you're that deep into your entrepreneurial journey, the cleanest way forward isn't like tweaking around the edges. It's just burning down the whole thing and starting completely fresh. And it kind of feels to me like that's exactly what she's trying to do by getting a fresh start with a new program. Next factor that I think was bound to play a role in the decision is boredom. Honestly, I think a lot of people underestimate just how repetitive and monotonous education businesses can really be. Running the same program for 10 years or however long it's been gets boring, even if it's successful, even if it's made you a lot of money, even if you love what you do. Most of CEOs I've worked with are creative, idea-driven, visionary people. They love starting things, they love building, they love experimenting. And almost every single one of them has gone through a stretch where they were deeply bored with their business. Not because it wasn't working, and not because the revenue went down, but because it started to feel too repetitive and too mind-numbing. When I see someone who's been in the business for years or even decades, it's not even a question to me whether at some point they wanted to walk away from their business. I know that moment happened. The difference is in what they decide to do next. Some founders find new meaning inside the work they already have, while others realize they'd rather start something completely new. And neither is inherently right or wrong. Now, this matters here because we're talking about someone who has been teaching essentially the same core thing for over 2 decades. Let that sink in. I mean, we can't even make it for a 60-second TikTok we find mildly uninteresting, and we're talking about running a business around the same topic for decades. In creator-led businesses that hinge on personal brand, if the person who is the business doesn't fill it up anymore, it eventually shows up in the numbers. If they don't feel inspired anymore, they spend less time on their business and they don't want to record new ads or new content or do it very reluctantly, then they outsource thought leadership to the team, hence their essence, the very thing that originally pulled people in, slowly disappears. And at the same time, maybe they'll start drifting into new topics that attract an audience that's no longer perfectly aligned with their flagship offer. Unless you've actually lived this, talking about the same topic for years upon years, it's hard to grasp just how repetitive it gets. At some point, it feels like you're just repeating yourself on autopilot. Now, if someone tells me they wouldn't get tired of that, I truthfully don't think they've ever done it long enough. There's also another boredom trigger people rarely think about, and it's catering to the same level of audience for years. When you're marketing your course at a very specific level and cohort after cohort keeps coming in at that same level, you get the same questions over and over again, you help people solve the same sticky points over and over again, and you give the same explanations. I see this often at year 4 or 5, where creators start launching masterminds or inner circles, more curated offers, or starting something entirely new to add a little bit of variety into the business. Excitement matters in a business like this. The creator's energy is part of the product, whether people like it or not. Seen through that lens, Amy's move actually makes a lot of sense. She's shifting from a mass market program to much more curated offers. Calibri Collective is geared towards female founders who are earning 150K plus a year, and Muley Club is a hand-selected group of 25 to 30 people for women already making 500K. So my hunch is that she really wants to dive more into advanced problems and have more nuanced conversations. And honestly, after making over 50 million from one product, why wouldn't you? For everyone thinking right now, well, for millions of dollars, I'd be willing to get bored. Ask yourself this: why is it so hard to stick to a workout routine that would give you your dream body, or stick to any routine you promise yourself? Money doesn't magically override human psychology, but when that boredom goes unaddressed for a long time, it usually turns into burnout. When the work no longer excites you, but the responsibility doesn't go away, that's where burnout starts. Because burnout in this context is not just about doing too much, and it's not about just being unmotivated. It's about carrying sustained responsibility for a long time without the emotional fuel that used to make it feel worth it. A lot of people assume that once you have a passive, fully remote, profitable business, burnout just disappears. But that's not how it works in practice. In fact, I'd argue that the more successful a business gets, the more pressure tends to pile on. More expectations, more people relying on you, more things that break if you step away. And even though info products are a relatively lean business model, they can still balloon into surprisingly complex operations. If you've built a big team, if you do big launches. Again, Vanessa Lau exited her Instagram online course at its peak because she was burned out. She talked very openly about this on her YouTube channel, about wanting to do things the right way, about chasing higher and higher returns, and eventually building a system that felt more like a burden than the freedom that she was actually after. Natalie Alice, the CEO of Boss Babe, has also spoken publicly about how complex her business became, to the point where she was this close to exiting it entirely before going back and deciding to restructure and change how it all worked. Examples like this are a dime a dozen. People see scalable revenue and assume it's all rainbows and butterflies, but even the easiest business setup can become heavy when you're carrying it for long enough. Now, when it comes to Amy specifically, there's one pressure point that stands out more than anything else, and it's the fact that she has live launched Digital Course Academy for years course, yes, there was an evergreen option, but she also was doing live launches all the time. And honestly, the only truly authentic emotion I saw in her podcast was exhaustion, specifically when she talked about live launching that program for so long. Live launches are no joke. I don't care how templatized they are. I don't care how often you've done them. They're always very high energy and very demanding. Rewarding, yes, but also relentless. And when you still feel excited about the work, that intensity can be very tolerable. You can gloss over the fact that you're running on fumes. You can gloss over the fact that it's so high energy. But once boredom creeps in, once that spark is gone, that same pressure becomes a lot harder to justify. And at that point, you just have to ask yourself, what is even tying me to that offer anymore? And I just think that Amy found an answer to that. Lastly, the most obvious reason info product businesses take a loss in revenue is when they do not adapt. So when they don't change or optimize a single thing in their funnel for years, and by the way, that is very often connected with creators' boredom of the business itself, or maybe when they don't acknowledge the changes in the industry. AI, of course, being the most obvious one. I'm still, at the time of recording this video in January 2026, see some copywriters trying to launch info products without addressing or acknowledging AI, or even worse, being so against it and not even acknowledging that people want to use it to become faster at what they do. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes you can make in business, period. You don't need to rebrand to an AI guru, but let's not pretend that both you and your audience aren't using AI tools on the daily. So instead of ignoring the subject and sort of burying your head in the sand, show people how to use it in a meaningful way, how to integrate it into the workflows in a way that makes sense. Now, this doesn't pertain to AI only. Every industry goes through changes, and if your business is not reacting to those changes and not adapting to them, it starts to feel like you're just not the best, most informed authority on the topic. So to recap, the info product industry is not over. It's still very much alive and kicking. However, building a profitable info product business in the times of AI looks different than it did 5 years ago. And if you want your info product to be successful, you need to adapt to a few essential changes which have changed the rules of the game, and I explain them in detail in the next video.